All right, we are about to dive into the massive, interconnected story of Greek mythology. And I mean, this is a truly epic tale of creation, betrayal, and heroism that has literally shaped Western culture for thousands of years. But it all starts with a pretty brutal family feud. Yeah, forget the Big Bang Theory for just a minute. Imagine this. The ancient Greeks pictured a universe born out of pure conflict, a cosmic soap opera where kids are constantly overthrowing their parents just to seize control. And this wild cycle of violence and succession, well, that's the engine that's going to drive this entire story. So, where does it all even begin? Well, before Zeus, before the Titans, before pretty much anything you'd recognize, there was just nothing. A void. Now, according to the ancient poet Hesiod, the universe started as chaos. And when he said chaos, he didn't mean disorder like a messy room. He meant a vast, dark, empty nothingness. This is the absolute ground zero from which everything, and I do mean everything, is about to spring into existence. So out of this emptiness, the very first primordial deities start to take shape, basically personifying the fabric of the brand new cosmos. You've got Gaia, the earth, and Uranus, the sky. And together, they give birth to the first generation of incredibly powerful beings, the 12 Titans, the one-eyed Cyclopes, and the 100-handed Hecatonchires. Talk about a family. And this, right here, brings us to the first major power struggle. See, the rise of the Titans wasn't exactly a peaceful handover. Nope, it established a really dark pattern of kids betraying their fathers that's going to define this entire era. Uranus was, to put it lightly, a terrible father and a cruel ruler. He was absolutely terrified by the monstrous strength of some of his kids, the Cyclops and the Hecatonchires. So what did he do? He literally pushed them back into the womb of their mother, Gaia, causing her unbelievable pain, and you guessed it, sparking a serious desire for revenge. So here's how that first epic overthrow went down. A furious Gaia forges a sickle made of the hardest metal imaginable and gives it to her youngest Titan son, Cronus. Cronus then ambushes his dad, and with one unbelievably brutal act, he castrates him. This act literally severs the sky from the earth, allowing the world to finally take its shape and, of course, putting the Titans in charge. You'd think he'd learn, right? But power corrupts. Cronus starts ruling from his own mountain, Mount Othrys, and he hears a prophecy that he too is going to be overthrown by one of his own kids. And this fear, it drives him to become just as tyrannical as the father he just took down. So, to stop the prophecy from coming true, Cronus does something just unthinkable. As his wife Rhea gives birth to their children, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, he snatches them up and swallows them whole, one by one. His wife Rhea just couldn't take it anymore. When her sixth child, Zeus, was born, she saved him. She hid him away and tricked Cronus into swallowing a stone wrapped in a blanket instead. Well, Zeus grows up in secret, comes back as an adult, and forces his father to regurgitate all of his siblings. And that act of liberation, that kicks off the Titanomachy, the epic 10-year war for total control of the universe. The victory of Zeus and his siblings, it changes everything. It marks the end of the raw, chaotic rule of the Titans and brings in the age of the Olympians, a totally new, more structured pantheon of gods ruling from the famous Mount Olympus. One of Zeus's first moves was a smart one. He freed his powerful uncles, the Cyclopes and the Hecatonchires, from their prison deep in the underworld. And in gratitude, the Cyclopes forged some of the most legendary weapons of all time, the thunderbolt for Zeus, the trident for Poseidon, and the helmet of invisibility for Hades. Armed with this new tech, they finally defeated the Titans and locked them away for good. So this new order is represented by the famous 12 Olympians. Now, unlike the Titans, who were basically raw forces of nature, these gods and goddesses governed specific parts of human life and culture. We're talking about justice, marriage, war, wisdom, the arts, you name it. They were also very human-like, reflecting all the best and, well, all the worst parts of humanity itself. With the gods now in charge, the stage is set for the next great chapter, the heroic age. This was a time when the Olympian gods were constantly interacting with mortals, let's say, and this led to the birth of a whole new generation of demigods and legendary heroes. So what drove these heroes? What made them tick? It really all comes down to one core concept: kleos. See, since mortals couldn't live forever like the gods, the next best thing was to make sure your name and your amazing deeds live forever in songs and stories. This quest for undying glory for Kleos was everything. And you can see this dynamic perfectly in the clash between the hero Odysseus and the Cyclops Polyphemus. It's a classic brains versus bronze situation. Odysseus doesn't win because he's stronger. He's not. He wins through what the Greeks called metis, cunning intelligence. He blinds the giant and escapes by tricking him, which proves that in this new age, intellect could totally triumph over raw, uncivilized force. And then, of course, there's Heracles. You probably know him as Hercules. He was the greatest of all the Greek heroes, the ultimate champion. And his famous 12 labors, they weren't just random monster-slaying quests. No, they were symbolic. Each one was about bringing order to a chaotic world, taming the wild, and basically making the world safer for the rest of humanity. All of these heroic stories, all these quests and monsters, they all lead to one final, massive, cataclysmic event, the Trojan War. This was the big one, a 10-year siege that brought together pretty much every major hero of the age. It was the end of an era, a grand, bloody finale that we know about from epics like the Iliad and the Odyssey. Okay, so why, thousands of years later, are we still talking about all of this? The simple answer is that these myths, they never really left us. Their legacy is literally woven into the fabric of our modern world. I mean, just think about our language. When you talk about someone's Achilles heel, that's a fatal weakness. A Trojan horse is a hidden threat. A Herculean task is a really difficult job. These phrases are direct echoes from the myths. They're like a cultural shorthand for these big, complex human experiences. But where do we even get all these stories from? Now, you might be surprised to learn that while Homer's Iliad and Odyssey are by far the most famous, they only account for about 8% of the myths that we know. Kind of crazy, right? The rest were actually saved and preserved by a whole network of later historians, geographers, and compilers like Apollodorus. And this influence goes so much deeper. That classic hero's journey structure, the one you see in everything from Star Wars to Harry Potter, that's built on the blueprint of these Greek heroic quests. Even modern psychology uses figures like Oedipus and Narcissus to help explain the fundamental drivers of the human mind. Look, at the end of the day, these stories are so much more than just ancient fables. They're really a living system for exploring life's biggest questions, the struggle between fate and free will, the nature of power, and our place in a pretty chaotic cosmos. They offer a timeless lens on what it means to be human. And that kind of brings us to a final thought. Whether it's the hubris of a powerful leader, a seemingly impossible Herculean task that society is facing, or just a personal quest for your own kind of glory, these patterns just keep repeating. So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Which ancient myth do you see playing out in the world today?